WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. We're going to take just a little bit of a break from talking all things football around here and all things Ravens as we have Steelers week. But I tell you, I was on the radio a long time before I said the Boston Red Sox are the world champions, but I have to say that right now. Luke Jones joins us to discuss the aftermath of a relatively quick World Series and quick and painless. The Red Sox were the best team in the regular season. They stumbled a little bit down the stretch and had their problems in September, but they were the best team in October, and the parade is in Boston again, whether it's hockey or basketball or most notably football. This is 4 now, and my wife stayed awake late, and it was beautiful weather out in L.A., but the baseball season is over again, Luke Jones.
Yeah, and you made that point that there was a time where the curse of the Bambino, it was almost palpable. I mean, it really felt like it was something that was real. You didn't know if the Red Sox were ever going to win. And it was very much, at least maybe for us, because we live in an American League East market, live in an American League town, it was much more to the forefront than, say, the Cubs, who had an even longer drought before they won a couple years ago. But I can still remember that 2004 postseason, and I didn't have a dog in the fight watching the Yankees go up 3-0 on the Red Sox, and then Boston coming back, and the rest was history. But I remember thinking how incredible that was to watch it, even as someone who wasn't a fan of that team. And now to think that it's happened 3 more times since then, and they've kind of, they've been the team of the 21st century so far. It is, hats off to them. They won 108 games. It's not really the same kind of fun storyline as when, even last year you had the Astros who were so bad and went through the rebuild. I mean, the Red Sox have, at their worst over the last 15 years, they've reloaded. So, they've actually had a couple bad teams, but it's never been for more than one season at a time.
Because they've never let Bobby Valentine stay more.
Yeah, exactly. Right? I mean, they've had some bad teams in isolation, but it's never been for 2 or 3 seasons or 4 seasons. They reload, they make some trades. We saw them deal off the Carl Crawfords and the Adrian Gonzalez's a few years back, more than a few years back now at this point. But
they've made mistakes with signings. They've wasted money, lots of money.
They've made a lot of mistakes with signings.
Panda.
But here's the difference, and we always talk about the payroll side of this, and look, they have a huge payroll. We know that. So do the Dodgers. So the Yankees are going to be back up there. But I think what's so impressive about this Red Sox team is the number of homegrown talents in that lineup. I mean, Mookie Betts, who is probably going to be the American League MVP, Andrew Benintendi, Bogarts. You just go down the list of these guys that they have, that they've cultivated, they've developed, and it really makes you, as someone who follows the Orioles, it makes you just that much more frustrated that here are all these players that the Red Sox are going to have to pay us a ton of money to keep, but right now, these are guys that they identified and they drafted or they signed internationally and developed.
Or they dealt for Chris Sale when they needed that kind of guy, and he was the guy out there standing with the ball at the end, right? The pile divers. But they also, Steve Pearce, right? That's going to be part of the story is how we blend into the Orioles. And Steve Pearce was involved in this, and wasn't involved. He was very, very involved. His hands were dirty, and that trophy's going to sit in his home for a long, long time, right?
As it should. I mean, think about this. That Friday night Game 3 that went 18 innings. And by the way, I made it for the entire thing. So
you did.
I think I should get a T-shirt or something for that.
I was at the airport flying to Charlotte in the morning, and I looked and I saw that my wife was live tweeting the 16th and 17th inning. Yeah. I didn't even realize that at 3 a.m., but she was awake, yes.
It was, I believe it ended shortly after 3:30 a.m. Eastern Time. But when you consider that, 1, the Red Sox lost that game, and 2, what the state of their bullpen was, and both teams, quite frankly, but I think even more so the Red Sox, for what Steve Pearce was able to do in Games 4 and then 5, hitting 2 home runs in Game 5 when they clinch it. I mean, it's a terrific story, and part of it's sad in the sense that he was a guy that had been more so known for his time with the Orioles, and obviously he had the big 2014 season that was out of nowhere. Keep in mind, the Orioles put him on waivers and then re-signed him early that season, and he was one of their best players that year. But this performance, and you feel good for him individually, but from an Orioles standpoint, he's now going to be known as a Red Sox, as a member of the Red Sox, whether he re-signs there or whether he goes elsewhere in 2019. I'm happy for him individually because, not that I know him incredibly well, but having covered him in Baltimore for a few years, well-liked by his teammates, a gamer, very unassuming, just a guy from Florida, really loves baseball, and had a lot of failure that he dealt with and a lot of movement and was a journeyman for a long time. And even when he's found some success the last 5 years, has still been a journeyman that's moved around. For him to have that kind of moment, that's pretty cool.
From Lakeland, Florida, too, from Ray Lewis's hometown, right?
Right. And even heard him, and I know this will make some Orioles fans cringe, but he grew up rooting for the Red Sox, seeing them in spring training, and that was his team. So you think from a context of, okay, put aside the disdain for the Red Sox and AL East rivalries and all that stuff, but for a guy as unassuming as him who's survived as long as he has in the major leagues, and that's what he did for a long time. He survived being on waivers and being a free agent and going to the minor leagues and all those different things, to have that opportunity then to play for your favorite team and to be the World Series MVP when you're not an all-star, you're not an MVP of the league.
The only other time he went to Disney World is when he drove up from Lakeland.
Yeah, exactly. So it's pretty cool. And I think for Orioles fans watching and cringing at the thought of the Red Sox winning another World Series.
Well, the good news is you beat Manny Machado, which is really good.
And I was going to say that for as much as people have demonized Manny Machado and made him the heel, and look, plenty of it self-inflicted. I get it, but
he is kind of a jerk.
Well, Manny being Manny, right? I mean, that's just it's just the reality of it.
But we didn't call him a jerk when he was here. No one ever called him a jerk here.
Well, there were things.
He threw bats, dude. I mean, he started fights.
Right. So I'll still say this. I still think teams are crazy if they say, I don't want this guy because he's that good of a talent. But, yeah, it definitely put him into the role of being a villain in baseball. And when you're a villain on the national stage in the postseason, fair or unfair, that's going to stick with you in the way that maybe the bat-throwing incident didn't stick with him as much as it should have, probably. If we're calling a spade there.
Well, name the last guy you saw throw a bat, not named Lenny Randall, right?
And to be very clear about that at the time, just to revisit that for just a moment, there were plenty of Orioles, plenty of his teammates were very unhappy about that, if you recall. So,
in a game of retribution, they pick at the team captain on the other side and do it to him. I mean, that's the way the game works. So, and everyone's sort of, unwritten rules. I heard Rob Manfred talking about the unwritten rules the other night before the game, saying the game sorts itself out. This is a commissioner saying this. I mean, that's the way it works, right? Literally.
It does, and some of it I really don't like in terms of the beanball kind of stuff. But, I mean, in any sport, there is decorum, let's say, for lack of a better term, that's to be followed, and that's certainly challenged, and we're seeing that in baseball in general with the celebrations and bat flips and seeing more emotion, which I'm in favor of seeing more emotion. As much as we keep worrying about the future of baseball, we need to start catering to youth a little bit more, and they see players have a little more energy and not frowning while they're circling the bases, hitting a home run. I don't think that's a bad thing, but there's a middle ground with some of this stuff, and certainly Manny Machado did not conduct himself as well as he should have. Do I think it's really going to have any kind of a meaningful impact on his free agency? No, because while I'll be the first to say there are other elite players I would prefer to him, but guess what? Those guys aren't available. Mike Trout's not available. Mookie Betts is not available right now. Max Scherzer is not available. So if you're a team that's truly wanting to add a dramatic impact player to your equation of trying to win,
Who's not Johnny Hustle.
He and Bryce Harper are it, and everyone else is a very, very distant third
How
place.
about in the World Series him hitting the ball 358 feet off the wall and getting a single because he jaked? How about that in the middle of the World Series?
I hear you. Nestor, you don't need to convince me of this. Manny is who he is, but in the same way that you're frustrated with someone who doesn't have speed or someone who doesn't hit for power or someone who struggles with his command despite having really good stuff, you look at the entire body of work and you ask yourself, is that player valuable? Is that player going to make me better? And anyone who says no on Manny Machado, you're wrong. Like, it's not even opinion. You're wrong. I mean, we can certainly debate what he's
but
worth.
Whether I want him on my team at $28 million a year with a commitment, that
fine,
really is the question.
But then
right?
you're not going to be as good. I mean, it's just because good luck trying to figure, and it's not impossible, but good luck trying to figure out ways that to make yourself markedly better.
Yeah, trying to go win with J.J. Hardy instead of him.
I mean, that's
right?
the thing.
Literally,
I said to you a week or two ago when we talked about this.
You want Tim
Rickard
Beckham or do you want you
but,
want Tim Beckham or you want Manny Machado? Which one? Yeah,
so,
I got you.
And I'm not apologizing for that. Believe me, what I like in watching professional athletes and what I admire, there are things about Manny Machado I do not like. I agree, but I also understand what the entire package is, and that's a player who is better than 99% of this league and is really, really good. Now, I'll say this, as much as we focused on the not hustling and what happened in the NLCS with clipping the first baseman as he was going past the bag and those types of things, the far bigger issue as far as it relates to his play, he had 182 in the World Series.
Yes, he did.
He didn't have a good series. And
he made the last out swinging from his knees.
Yeah,
he was hitting 190
struck out
when
three
he came
times
to the
in Game 5. So that's more of an issue, at least in terms of how the World
raise
Series
his
played
stock
out
in the last couple of weeks. I mean, he really didn't. I don't think he's going to get more money because of his antics in October. I don't know if he'll get less, but I know he's not going to get more.
And that's fair. He certainly could have enhanced his value in the way that you kind of look at what happened with Daniel Murphy a few years back with the Mets, and look what he ended up doing. I mean, he had a historic postseason, and he absolutely parlayed that into some more money. So, yeah, Manny missed out on that opportunity, even though he did have some big hits earlier in the postseason. Certainly did not have them but in the World Series, but he also wasn't alone in that department. You look at some of the other averages, some of the other numbers in that Dodgers lineup. The Red Sox were the better team. It's plain and simple. And as much as I'll remember Game 3, because that was extraordinary to sit there and watch.
Because you slept till 2 in the afternoon the next day, probably?
Yeah. I mean, I was dragging the next day. There's no doubt. But I also thought to myself, how many World Series games have I watched over the years that have become nothing more than something I Google every once in a while? This was one I will remember, and on a personal level, I watched the final 2.5 hours from my bedroom, just lying in bed, and I am the type, when I watch TV in bed, I fall asleep in 5 minutes, so it does speak to how captivated I was, and I know it was really late, and I don't fault anyone for not hanging in there for that one, but I'll remember that, but the rest of the World Series, I mean, it's not as though all the games were necessarily blowouts, but you have to really give a lot of credit to the Red Sox. They were
come on. Puig dropped the hammer on them. That series was 2-2. I mean, period, right? I mean, Puig dropped the hammer at 10 o'clock on Saturday night, and Sunday night they're eliminated, right? I mean, wow. Don't blink. Things happen fast in Major League Baseball, right?
And things happen fast with the Red Sox when they're hitting with 2 outs. I mean, you just as someone who is a self-proclaimed stat nerd, you hear a lot about wondering if there truly are clutch teams and clutch individuals, and so many of those numbers with runners in scoring position and things like that are fleeting from year to year. It's very volatile. You'll have someone who's really great with runners in scoring position. Trey Mancini was great with runners in scoring position last year. This season that just came to an end was not. So you have plenty of that, but when you look at the number of instances where the Red Sox got big hits with 2 outs. I mean, you just have to be impressed. And, the Dodgers, I know a lot of people talked about Dave Roberts and having a rough series, and certainly there were some moves that I would at least question or raised an eyebrow, but his guys didn't get it done. I mean, Kenley Jansen was not Kenley Jansen, and other members of that bullpen struggled. And to your point, you saw what happened on Saturday night, 4-0, and looking like the Dodgers have it even, and it's going to go back to Fenway Park, and who knows
Oh,
what
my
happens.
God. I had ordered popcorn and clam chowder for Tuesday night. I was like, I wanted to sit here and get it to 7. I was just rooting for 7. Now, I'll watch Monday Night Football and, I don't know, get ready for the Steelers or something, right? You know what I'm getting ready for, Luke Jones? I'm getting ready for the Orioles all season. All of our WNST coverage brought to you by our friends Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast, and the tasty 99-cent coffee, as well as the Rofo Rewards app and the card. Download that. You'll get your fried chicken and your Western fries free of charge. Also, our baseball-loving friends at Amici's of Little Italy and High Street. Get on over there for the Pane Rotundo, the meatballs, the Ziti La Rosa, my favorites. The best marinara on earth is at High Street in Little Italy. It's been a couple weeks since I've gotten over there, so I'm going to have to get over to make that happen. Luke, the Orioles, let's bring it full circle here, because we talked about Machado and Pierce and, what's going to happen, and the Red Sox being good, and the Yankees will be good next year. Probably Tampa's going to be good next year as well. Here we go, dude. The cones of silence are off. The season's over. Where do you go, Lou and John Angelos?
Well, I mean, you got to make a hire here. I mean, if the reports and speculation are accurate that they truly want to hire a head of baseball operations and then have a general manager, which is not a structure that's uncommon in today's game. I mean, you see that in many places, many successful places, where you have someone that is in charge from a laying out a vision and maybe making the final decisions on big picture kind of decisions, those defining kind of decisions as a franchise. Then you have a GM who carries that out. So I have no problem with that, but you need to get going on this. I mean, this week will mark 4 weeks since they waved goodbye officially to Buck Showalter and Dan Duquette. And while free agency really isn't going to be something that, in my mind, is relevant to the 2019 Orioles, you still need to start building an infrastructure with your organization and either keeping certain individuals that you feel are assets within the organization, and I think there are people that do exist and that fit that description, or hiring others to fill your baseball operations, to fill your scouting department, to fill your minor league development. You've got to get working on that. And any more time you use to just make that initial hire is lost time to potentially be able to hire other good people, whether they're with other organizations or whether they're on an expiring contract and they're looking for work. I mean, the clock's ticking in that regard. So I've said all along, there doesn't need to be one perfect – I never feel there's one perfect hire, whether you're talking about a general manager, whether you're talking about a head coach in the NFL, whatever the case might be. There can be, and there is more than one right answer, but you need to hire that person. You would hope to think you're coming very close to doing that, because even if 2019 doesn't matter in terms of what the Major League Club's going to look like, because I don't think anyone has any false pretenses or assumptions that this team's going to be anything but bad, that still doesn't mean you can't accomplish some meaningful tasks and lay out some goals and start working towards those goals this offseason. But until you have that person in place and you have a press conference and they lay that out and they hire their manager and you start looking at what you're doing from a scouting standpoint, from an analytics standpoint, what you're going to do to actually leave a footprint in the international market and not just talk a good game about Victor Mesa.
And I'll keep saying this. It comes back to who? Who is going to lead
exactly.
It's a human being that's going to be a part of this. And we've seen it done well with Andy McPhail. Yeah, we've seen it done well with Pat Gillick. In our lifetime, we've seen it done well with Hank Peters. I mean, back in the day. So it has been done well, but make no mistake about it, not just the Dodgers who lost or the Red Sox who won. It's about the people who run those franchises. It really is.
No question. I mean, we can talk all we want about payroll and how much money is spent. And certainly those things are important. We all understand that. But ultimately, you need to have good people making decisions for you. The Yankees didn't just get some of the young players that they have, or the Red Sox didn't just get some of the young players that they have just because they have a lot of money. They have good people. They have good scouts. They make good decisions. Now, do they have a wider margin for error because of what their financial flexibility is? Sure, compared to the Tampa Bay Rays of the baseball world. But you still need good people making decisions. And we've seen plenty of big payroll teams over the last 2 decades still stink because why? They don't have good people running their organization. So you pray, if you're an Orioles fan, that they identify someone that will be good running the organization, and even more so, you pray that they actually have the latitude and the freedom to make decisions.
Well, we've heard Ben Cherington's name. We've heard Kim Ng's name. We've heard the guys from Houston. And all that being said, there needs to be a level of trust that they're going to take this gig and it's going to be different than when the old man ran the team. And I don't know that anybody can buy into that yet, that these kids know what they're doing. I think it might be the exact opposite. I don't think anybody really believes they know what they're doing. They're sort of guilty until proven innocent in that way.
Well, when your father had the track record that he did, that's reality. Perception is reality, right? I mean, it kind of has to be until they show otherwise. And we've talked about it as far as how this has been handled and the lack of transparency and all of that. It's not off to a good start, but ultimately what we've talked about to this point isn't the most important factor. The most important factor is hiring a good person and letting that person do the job. Until we see that happen and until you see the results, we don't know. And it's absolutely fair to doubt it. There's no doubt. But at some point, you'd like to start seeing some movement here because, again, this goes beyond just hiring a GM and hiring a manager. I mean, there are people within this organization with contracts that expire this week, and they're trying to figure out, are they going to be here? Are they going to be somewhere else? And those people deserve to be treated a certain way in that regard. And do you want to keep some of them? Are you going to have others move on, which is inevitable when a new regime takes over, and it should be that way. But there's also wanting to hire other good people, and the clock's ticking in that regard. I don't even care. I mean, people have talked about free agency starting, and it moves quickly. I mean, what free agents are the Orioles going to sign that really matters at this point in time? I mean, they might bring in a veteran or two on a one-year deal, Kevin Millar kind of deals. You know what I'm talking about. But what really does matter is hiring good baseball people to fill your front office, to fill your scouting department, to fill your analytics department that's hopefully going to be beefed up. And that takes manpower. You can't do that with a few people. That takes hiring good people. And to be very clear, they're not going to accomplish all of that this off season. That's going to be an ongoing process. And that's fine, but you'd like to get a good head start on it. You'd like to get off to a good start and hire some good people, and then they know other good people to hire, whether it's this year or next year, sometime in the not too distant future. But these are things that take time, and it's a process. And the longer you delay, begin taking that first step.
It just feels like they've had 100 days to figure this out.
Right,
they've had
since
the All-Star break that they should have an announcement like now.
Yeah.
Like now. I mean, the winter meetings are 4 weeks away. Like now.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, you said it. Even if you weren't 100% convinced that you were going to move on from Dan Duquette, and there was plenty of speculation. I mean, heck, there was a report from USA Today about 2 weeks before the season ended that Duquette was going to be extended. So even if there was uncertainty in that regard, there are still ways to put out feelers and still ways to start exploring candidates. Even if you're not interviewing a candidate, you should be fact-finding and researching and talking to people and relationships that teams have with people from other organizations and finding things out. So there was no excuse for it to be you announce that Duquette's gone, you announce that Buck Showalter's gone, and then you're working from an entirely clean slate and haven't done any groundwork. And if that truly was the case, we don't know that, and they might have identified people, and they're being deliberate and trying to be tight-lipped about it because they're trying to to hire the perfect person, and they're not wanting that to leak out. If that's the case, and they ultimately land that person and they do a good job, then great, good. We won't remember that it took 3.5 weeks after the season to hire your head of baseball ops. But the longer this drags on, you just can't help but think of potential missed opportunities that are falling by the wayside because you haven't even taken that first step to hire the head honcho, so to speak.
All right, we are all waiting. When it happens, you'll get it first on the WNST text service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. I know it's not like baseball season around here. I know the Red Sox just won, but I'm not going to let this Oriole thing just go and we're just beat up Joe Flacco and John Harbaugh and the defense all week. There's plenty of time for that. We'll get to that next. It's Pittsburgh week around here. You can find Luke out at WNST.net or in Owings Mills getting ready for all things Ravens this week or Orioles this week, or whatever comes our way. I'm out on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Snapchat and Instagram and streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. You can find anything on the radio this week in the buyatoyota.com audio vault. It's there for you 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world. Download, listen to what you want, when you want, where you want, how you want. It's the buyatoyota.com audio vault. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.